Bae pushed open her apartment door, exhausted from another long day at work. As she stepped inside, her foot nearly knocked against something sitting perfectly centered on her welcome mat. She looked down. A small, elegant box wrapped in glossy black paper with a blood-red ribbon. No note, no label, just a mysterious package, waiting for her as if someone had placed it there moments before she arrived. A thrill shot through her. A secret admirer? A grateful client? Her tiredness vanished as she scooped up the box, already imagining who might have left it. Inside, nestled in black velvet, was the most beautiful perfume bottle she'd ever seen. Sleek crystal glass with a golden nozzle that glinted under the hallway light. The scent hit her immediately. Intoxicating, floral, with a hint of something spicy underneath. Without thinking, she lifted it to her neck and pressed the nozzle. A delicate mist settled on her skin. She inhaled deeply, sighing as the fragrance wrapped around her. Sweet jasmine, warm sandalwood, and something richer, darker, that made her pulse quicken. For a moment, she didn't care who had left it. Then her nose twitched. Something beneath the sweetness smelled off. But by then, it was already too late. She dismissed the strange sensation with a small shake of her head, her lips curling into a pleased smile. The initial sweetness of the fragrance still lingered pleasantly in the air, and she twirled the elegant bottle between her fingers, admiring how the light caught its golden accents. Whoever left this has excellent taste, she thought, her earlier exhaustion forgotten. With one last appreciative sniff, she placed the perfume carefully on her dresser, right beside her jewelry box where she could see it every morning. The mystery of its sender only made it more exciting. A little secret to wonder about later. For now, it was just a beautiful gift. Nothing more. The next day, the smell hit Bae the moment she opened her eyes. It was thick and sour, like spoiled milk mixed with rotting meat. She sat up in bed, her nose wrinkling in disgust. What is that? She sniffed the air, turning her head left and right, trying to find the source. Then, with a sickening realization, she understood it was her. Her stomach twisted. She threw off the covers and stumbled to the bathroom, nearly tripping in her haste. The mirror showed her reflection. Pale face, wide eyes, hair tangled from sleep. But it was the smell that made her want to vomit. She turned on the shower, the water scalding hot, and scrubbed her skin until it turned red and raw. She used soap, body wash, even shampoo, lathering herself over and over. But when she stepped out and toweled off, the stench was still there. No, no, no. She grabbed her favorite perfume from the dresser and sprayed it wildly. Once, twice, 3 times. The sweet floral scent mixed with a foul odor, making it even worse. She rubbed scented oils on her wrists, her neck, anywhere she could think of. But nothing worked. The smell clung to her like a second skin. Panic set in. She had to go to work. Bae dressed quickly, choosing a high-collar blouse as if it could somehow trap the odor. She avoided the elevator, taking the stairs instead, not wanting to trap anyone in a small space with her. The walk to the office felt like a nightmare. People on the sidewalk glanced at her, their noses twitching. A woman waiting at the crosswalk subtly shifted away. Bae's face burned with humiliation. When she stepped into the office, the reactions were worse. Her co-worker, Lisa, froze mid-sentence, her nose wrinkling. "Oh my God," she muttered, not even trying to hide her disgust. Another voice whispered, "Is there a dead rat in here?" Bae kept her head down, rushing to her desk. She could feel eyes on her, hear the murmurs. Her hands shook as she tried to focus on her computer screen, but the shame was too much. After barely an hour, she grabbed her bag and fled, mumbling something about not feeling well. At home, she stripped off her clothes and got back into the shower, scrubbing until her skin stung. But the smell wouldn't leave. That night, Maide came over. The second he walked through the door, his face twisted. "What the hell is that smell?" he demanded, covering his nose with his hand. Bae's throat tightened. "I don't know," she cried, her voice breaking. "I woke up like this. I can't get rid of it." Maide took a step back, his expression full of disgust. "You smell like something died. Fix yourself." Then he turned and walked out, the door slamming behind him. Bae stood there, trembling. Then her legs gave out. and she collapsed to the floor, sobbing into her hands. She had no idea what was happening to her. And worse, she had no idea how to make it stop. Bae didn't sleep that night. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, the foul odor filling the room like a living thing. Every time she moved, the stench seemed to shift with her, clinging to her sheets, her hair, her skin. She had taken 3 more showers, scrubbing until her body ached, but nothing changed. The smell was part of her now. When morning came, she dragged herself out of bed, her eyes swollen from crying. She didn't bother with makeup. What was the point? No amount of concealer could hide the way people looked at her now. Like she was something rotten. A knock at the door made her jump. "Bae, it's me." Tia's voice, her best friend, the one person who hadn't run away yet. Bae hesitated before opening the door, bracing herself for the reaction. Tia stood there, a bag of groceries in one hand and a forced smile on her face. But the second Bae stepped aside to let her in, that smile faltered. Tia's nose twitched. Her breath hitched. But to her credit, she didn't recoil. She didn't say a word. "You don't have to pretend," Bae muttered, wrapping her arms around herself. "I know it's bad." Tia set the groceries down on the kitchen counter. "I brought some air fresheners. And soup. You look like you haven't eaten." Bae swallowed hard. She hadn't. The smell made her too nauseous to even think about food. Tia moved to the apartment, cracking open windows despite the chilly air outside. She sprayed the room with a citrus-scented freshener, but the sickly sweet aroma only mixed with the decay, making it worse. When did this start? Tia asked finally, turning to face her. Bae's eyes flicked to the dresser, where the perfume bottle still sat, gleaming under the dim light. "After I used that." Tia followed her gaze. She walked over and picked up the bottle, turning it in her hands. The crystal glass was cold against her fingers. The golden nozzle shimmered, almost mocking in its elegance. For a second, Tia's grip tightened. Her knuckles whitened. Then, smash! The bottle shattered against the hardwood floor, glass skittering in every direction. The liquid inside evaporated almost instantly, leaving behind only a faint, bitter scent that was quickly swallowed by the overwhelming stench still clinging to Bae. "There," Tia said, brushing her hands together. "It's gone now." Bae stared at the broken shards, hope flaring in her chest. Maybe this was it. Maybe breaking the bottle would break whatever curse had been placed on her. But then she took a deep breath, and the smell was still there. Worse, even thicker, like sewage, like something left to fester. Tia's expression darkened. She knelt beside the broken glass, picking up a piece between her fingers. "This isn't normal," she murmured. Bae's hands trembled. "What do you mean?" Tia didn't answer right away. She just stared at the glass, her brow furrowed. Then she stood abruptly. "We'll figure this out, okay? I promise." But Bae wasn't sure she believed her, because as Tia turned away, Bae could have sworn she saw something flash in her best friend's eyes, something that looked a little too much like satisfaction. The digital clock glowed 3:17 a.m. when the sound first pulled Bae from sleep. She lay frozen in bed, the stale air of her bedroom suddenly electric with tension. The whisper came again, closer this time. "I'm so happy it worked." Tia's voice, hushed but unmistakable, slithered through the darkness. Bae's breath caught in her throat. "Worked? What worked?" Her fingers dug into the mattress as she strained to hear more. The floorboards creaked under cautious footsteps approaching her door. Bae squeezed her eyes shut, forcing her breathing into the slow, steady rhythm of sleep as the doorknob turned with a barely audible click. Moonlight spilled across the bed as the door inched open. Bae could feel the weight of Tia's gaze on her, heavy and assessing. The smell, that godawful, unshakable stench, seemed to thicken in the air between them, almost pulsing with each beat of Bae's racing heart. 1 minute. 2. The silence stretched until Bae thought she might scream from the tension. Finally, the door whispered shut. Bae waited until she heard the guest room door close before daring to move. Her entire body trembled as she sat up, the sheets damp with sweat. The clock now read 3:42 a.m. Sleep was impossible. She spent the remaining hours of darkness replaying that whispered phrase, examining it from every angle. I'm so happy it worked. The satisfaction in Tia's voice had been unmistakable. But work how? Worked on what? When gray dawn light finally crept through blinds, Bay was already sitting upright in bed, her back pressed against the headboard. The sounds of movement came from the kitchen, the clink of dishes, the hiss of the coffee maker. Tia appeared in the doorway, holding 2 mugs. "You're awake early," she said, her voice carefully light. "I made coffee." Bay studied her best friend's face, the face she'd known since college, now suddenly unfamiliar. Was there something new in Tia's expression? A smugness around the eyes? A secret smile hiding in the curve of her lips? "Thanks," Bay managed, accepting the mug but not drinking. Tia perched on the edge of the bed, her own coffee untouched. "How are you feeling?" she asked, her gaze flickering over Bay's face with what might have been concern or curiosity. "The same," Bay said flatly. "It's not getting better." Tia's fingers tightened around her mug. "We'll figure it out," she said, too quickly. "I have to run to work early today, but I'll call you later, okay?" She was out the door before Bay could respond, moving with a strange urgency. The apartment seemed to exhale when she left, the air somehow lighter without her presence. Bay waited until she heard the elevator ding before stumbling to bathroom. Her reflection in the mirror shocked her, dark circles under bloodshot eyes, lips bitten raw from nervous chewing. "Did you do this to me?" she whispered to the empty apartment, to the ghost of their friendship. Her hand shook as she reached for her phone, scrolling through contacts until she found Yi's name. An old friend, someone from before the madness, someone who might still look at her, without disgust. Before she could call, a knock at the door startled her so badly she nearly dropped the phone. Through the peephole, Mark himself stood in the hallway, his expression grim, as if her thoughts had summoned him. Bay's breath caught. Was this another twist in the nightmare, or the beginning of answers? Her fingers trembled on the doorknob as the first real tear since this began slid down her cheek. He knock came again, harder this time, more urgent. Bay wiped her face with shaking hands and forced herself to the door. When she looked through the peephole, her breath caught in her throat. Mark. It had been years since she'd seen him last. His dark hair was shorter now, his jawline sharper, but his eyes were the same, warm, steady, familiar. The sight of him sent an unexpected rush of relief through her. She yanked the door open. Mark. And then his face changed. His nose wrinkled. His eyes watered. His entire body tensed, as if bracing against a physical blow. "Bay!" He choked out, his voice strained. What is that smell?" The fragile hope inside her shattered. She turned away, humiliation burning through her. I know how bad it is." Mark recovered faster than Maide had. He stepped inside and closed the door behind him, his expression shifting from shock to concern. "Are you sick? Did something happen?" Bay wrapped her arms around herself, nails digging into her skin. Where did she even begin? So she told him everything. The mysterious perfume left at her door. The way the scent had seemed beautiful at first, sweet, intoxicating, before twisting into something rotten. The way it clung to her no matter how much she scrubbed. Maide's disgusted reaction. His cruel words before he walked out. And then Tia. The way Tia had smashed the perfume bottle without hesitation. The whispered phone call in the dead of night. I'm so happy it worked. The way she had stood over Bay's bed, watching. Mark listened without interrupting, his dark eyes growing stormier with every word. When she finished, he exhaled sharply through his nose. "This isn't normal," he said finally. Bay let out a hollow laugh. "No shit." Mark shook his head. "No, I mean this isn't natural." He hesitated, then met her eyes. "I think you've been cursed." The word hung between them, heavy and absurd. A month ago, Bay would have laughed. Now she just felt cold. Mark pulled out his phone. "I know someone who can help." Bay's pulse jumped. "Who?" "My aunt. She's knowledgeable about these things. These things. Dark magic. Curses. The kind of stuff people don't believe in until it happens to them. Mark's thumb hovered over his screen. Can you be ready in 10 minutes? Bay looked down at herself. Her greasy hair, her sweat-stained clothes, the lingering reek that no amount of showers could wash away. She grabbed her keys. I'm ready now. The drive to Mark's aunt's house felt endless. Bay sat stiffly in the passenger seat, her fingers clenched around the fabric of her hoodie, pulling it up over her nose every few minutes out of habit. Even though Mark hadn't complained once about the smell since they'd left her apartment. The neighborhood changed as they drove, from Bay's modern high-rise to narrower streets, then finally to an older part of town where the houses sat farther apart, shaded by massive trees. Mark pulled up to a small cottage surrounded by herbs and flowering plants, their scent drifting through the car window as Bay stepped out. Before they could even knock, the door opened. A tall woman stood in the doorway, her dark hair streaked with silver, her sharp eyes locking onto Bay immediately. She didn't flinch at the smell. She didn't even react. Come in, she said simply. The inside of the house was warm, lit by candles and the faint glow of hanging lanterns. Dried herbs hung from the ceiling, and shelves lined the walls, filled with jars of powders, liquids, and things Bay couldn't identify. The woman, Madame Hannah, Mark called her, gestured for Bay to sit at a small wooden table. She took the seat across from her, studying Bay with intensity that made her skin prickle. Without a word, Madame Hannah reached out and took Bay's hands in hers. Her grip was firm, her fingers tracing the lines of Bay's palms before she suddenly inhaled sharply. Someone close to you has cursed you, she said, her voice low and certain. Bay's breath caught. Tia. Madame Nia nodded. A friend who was never truly a friend. The confirmation hit Bay like a physical blow. Her chest ached. Tia, her best friend, the person she trusted most, had done this to her. Why? Her voice cracked. Envy, Madame Nia said simply. A heart that turned bitter, watching you shine. Mark stood silently by the door, his jaw tight. Bay couldn't look at him. She couldn't look at anything except her own trembling hands. Madame Hannah stood up and moved one of the shelves, selecting a small vial of dark liquid. She poured it into a cup, added something from another jar, then stirred it 3 times clockwise. Drink, she said, pressing the cup into Bay's hands. The liquid was thick, bitter, and so dark it looked black. Bay hesitated only a second before tipping it back. She felt a burn in her throat. She gasped, doubling over as the heat spread through her chest, her stomach, her limbs. It burned like swallowing molten metal, like her blood had turned to lava. She screamed, her hands clawing at her own skin, as if she could tear the pain out of herself. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, it stopped. The burning faded. The pain vanished. And the smell, the horrible, unshakable stench that had clung to her for days, was gone. Bay took a deep, shuddering breath. The air was clean, fresh. She lifted her hands to her face, inhaling again and again, half convinced she was imagining it. But it was real. She burst into tears. Mark was at her side in an instant, pulling her into his arms. She clung to him, sobbing into his shoulder, her entire body shaking with relief. Madame Hannah watched them, her expression unreadable. The curse is broken, she said. But be careful, child. The one who did this to you is still out there. Bay swallowed hard, wiping her face. She had her life back. Now she needed answers. The weeks that followed were like waking up from a nightmare. Bay's skin no longer carried that wretched stench. Her apartment smelled like fresh linen, and the lavender candles she bought to replace the memory of decay. Colleagues at work no longer flinched when she walked by. She could breathe again, really breathe, without the crushing weight of humiliation. And through it all, Mark never left her side. He had been there the day after the curse broke, showing up at her door with takeout and a determined look. We're celebrating, he'd said, as if it were non-negotiable. He'd been there when she finally confronted Tia, standing silently in the background like a shield, while Tia's face twisted from shock to anger to something cold and unreadable. You always did have to be the victim, didn't you? Tia had hissed before turning away, their friendship dissolving like smoke. And now, on an ordinary Tuesday evening, Mark knelt in front of her on the floor of her apartment, a small velvet box in his hands. Marry me, he said. Not will you marry me? Just marry me, as if it were the most natural next step in the world. Bay didn't hesitate. Yes. The word tumbled out before she could think. But once it was said, she knew it was right. Mark's face lit up as he slid the ring onto her finger. A simple band with a single emerald, her birthstone. Then he kissed her, slow and sweet, his hands cradling her face like she was something precious. I want you to meet my mother, he murmured against her lips. Bay pulled back slightly. Mark rarely spoke about his family. She knew his father had passed years ago, but his mother was a mystery, only ever mentioned in passing. Okay, she said. Mark smiled, but there was something strange in his eyes, something almost nervous. Tomorrow night, she's expecting us. Mark's childhood home was nothing like Bay expected. She imagined something modest, maybe a little worn, the kind of place a single mother would raise a son on a tight budget. Instead, Mark drove him to an elegant townhouse in one of the city's oldest neighborhoods, where ivy crawled up brick walls and the front doors were painted deep, rich colors. His mother answered on the first knock. Mrs. was striking, tall and regal, with the same sharp cheekbones as Mark, her hair twisted into an elaborate updo. She wore a flowing dress that looked both expensive and effortless, and when she smiled, Bay understood where Mark got his charm. Finally, Mrs. said, pulling Bay into a hug that smelled like jasmine and something faintly spicy. Mark has told me so much about you. Dinner was a lavish spread. Spiced meats, fragrant rice, vegetables glistening with oil. Mrs. asked Bay about her job, her family, her dreams, all while piling more food onto her plate. You're too thin, she tutayed, spooning another serving of stew onto Bay's rice. A woman should be strong, especially if she's to be part of this family. Bay flushed, glancing at Mark. He was watching her with that soft expression he'd worn more and more lately, the one that made her stomach flutter. It wasn't until after dessert, a sweet, sticky pastry that melted on Bay's tongue, that things shifted. Mrs. rose gracefully. I'll make tea, she said, disappearing into the kitchen. Mark squeezed Bay's hand. I'll help. He left her alone at the table. Bay sat back, smiling to herself, her fingers tracing the edge of her empty plate. Then she noticed it. The remote control had fallen between the sofa cushions. She reached down to retrieve it, her fingers brushing against something else, a crumpled piece of paper. Without thinking, she pulled it out and froze. It was a receipt for a perfume bottle, a crystal perfume bottle with a golden nozzle. The date on the receipt was a day before the cursed gift had appeared on her doorstep, and the name on the receipt wasn't Tia's. It was Mark's. Her breath left her in a rush. The room spun. Footsteps approached from the kitchen. Bay looked up just as Mark stepped back into the dining room, his smile fading the second he saw her face. His gaze dropped to the receipt in her hand, and in that moment, she saw the truth in his eyes. The receipt trembled in Bay's fingers. The numbers, the date, the description of the perfume bottle, all of it blurred as hot tears welled in her eyes. Mark stood frozen in the doorway, his mother hovering just behind him, her expression unreadable. The silence was suffocating. You, Bay whispered, her voice cracking. You did this. Mark's face crumpled. For a moment, he looked like a little boy caught in a terrible lie. Then his shoulders slumped, and the words spilled out in a rush. I just wanted you to love me. The admission hit Bay like a physical blow. Her legs threatened to give out, but she forced herself to stand, to face him. You cursed me, she breathed. You made me smell like rot for weeks. You watched me lose everything, my job, my dignity, my day, and you just stood there, pretending to care. Mrs. moved then, gliding forward with an eerie calm, placing her hand on her son's shoulder. My boy has loved you for years, she said, her voice softer now. But you never noticed him, not the way he wanted. Bay gaped at her. Love? He destroyed my life. Mark's eyes were wet. I tried everything, Bay. I was always there for you, always listening, always waiting. But you only ever saw me as a friend. And then my day came along and he swallowed hard. You chose him. I didn't know it would be like this. The prophet, She told me the perfume would make you vulnerable, that it would push away anyone who didn't truly care about you. She said when you had no one left, I could be the one to save you. And then you'd finally love me back. Mark took a step forward, his hands outstretched. Bae, please. No. She stumbled back, knocking into the chair behind her. You made me think Tia betrayed me. You let me hate her. Bae's stomach twisted. Bae looked between them, her chest tight. And the food, she asked coldly. What was in it? Mark hesitated. His mother's grip on his shoulder tightened. It was meant to bind you to him, Mrs. N admitted quietly, to ensure your heart stayed with his. The room spun. Bae shoved back on the table, her chair screeching against the floor. You're monsters. Mark grabbed her wrist. Bae, please, I can fix this. I'll undo everything. Just give me a chance. She yanked her arm free. You don't deserve a chance. Mrs. N stepped between them, her voice pleading for the first time. He made a mistake, but his love for you is real. Can't you forgive him? Bae looked at Mark, at the tears streaking his face, at the desperation in his eyes. The boy she'd once trusted, the friend she'd thought she knew, and she realized with a sickening clarity that she didn't recognize him at all. No, she said softly. Then louder, no. She turned and ran, their cries for forgiveness ringing in her ears. She didn't look back. The cold night air slapped Bae's face as she stumbled down the porch steps. Her hands shook as she pulled out her phone, her vision blurred with tears. She dialed the one person she thought she would never call again. The phone rang only twice before Tia answered. Bae! Her voice was sharp with concern. I need you, Bae choked out, her breath coming in ragged gasps as she stumbled down the street. Please. Where are you? Tia demanded. Bae barely managed to give her location before her legs gave out. She sank onto the curb, her entire body trembling. The world spun around her, streetlights blurring into streaks of gold, the hum of distant traffic fading in and out. She didn't know how much time passed before headlights cut through the darkness, and Tia's car screeched to a halt in front of her. Tia was out of the vehicle before the engine stopped running. Oh my God, Bae! She dropped to her knees, her hands immediately checking Bae's pulse, her temperature. What happened? Are you hurt? Bae tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come. Her vision swam. That's it. We're going to the hospital, Tia said firmly, hauling Bae to her feet. The ride to the emergency room was a blur. Bae leaned her head against the window, watching the city lights streak past as Tia drove with one hand on the wheel and the other gripping Bae's knee like an anchor. At the hospital, nurses rushed to take vitals while Tia barked orders like a general. Check for poisoning. She was at Mark's house. They might have given her something. Bae wanted to protest, to tell them she wasn't poisoned, just broken, but the words stuck in her throat. Hours later, after blood tests and 4 fluids, a doctor confirmed what Bae already knew in her gut. There were traces of a sedative in your system, he said, frowning at the results. Not enough to be dangerous, but enough to make you compliant. Someone wanted you suggestible. Tia's grip on Bae's hand turned crushing. When they finally left the hospital, dawn was breaking over the city. Tia took Bae straight to her apartment. Not Bae's, where too many bad memories lingered, but her own clean, bright space that smelled like lemon cleaner and fresh laundry. She sat Bae down on the couch, wrapped her in a blanket, and made tea in silence. When she finally spoke, her voice was quiet. That night you heard me on the phone. Bae stiffened. Tia sighed, running a hand through her hair. It was my brother. We were planning a surprise birthday party for my mom. That's all. When I said, I'm so happy it worked, I meant the venue booking. The restaurant we wanted had just confirmed. The weight of her mistake crushed Bae. I know what you thought, Tia said softly, and I get why. But, Bae, I would never hurt you. The dam broke. Bae collapsed into sobs, all the fear and guilt and shame pouring out of her at once. Tia pulled her close, holding her tight as she cried. I'm sorry. Bae gasped between tears. I'm so sorry. Stop, Tia murmured into her hair. You were cursed, betrayed, and poisoned. You get a free pass on bad judgment. A watery laugh escaped Bay. She pulled back, wiping her face. Mark really did all this just to, what? Make me love him? Tia's expression darkened. Some people don't know the difference between love and possession. They talk for hours about Mark, about the curse, about everything Bay had endured. With each word, the knot in Bay's chest loosened. By the time the sun was high in the sky, Bay felt something she hadn't in weeks. Hope. Tia squeezed her hand. We'll figure this out. Together. And for the first time, Bay believed it. A year later, Bay sat across from Tia in a sunlit cafe, her hands wrapped around a warm mug of tea. The cafe buzzed with midday chatter, the scent of freshly ground coffee mixing with the buttery aroma of croissants. Bay leaned back in her chair, watching sunlight dance across the table as Tia animatedly recounted her latest dating disaster. So then he says, I don't believe in monogamy. And I said, I don't believe in second dates, Tia concluded, tossing her napkin on the table in triumph. Bay laughed, the sound light and effortless. A year ago, she couldn't have imagined laughing like this. Not after everything that had happened. The police investigation had concluded months prior. Mark and his mother had pleaded guilty to multiple charges, including assault and attempted poisoning. The prophet had never been found, but Bay didn't care anymore. The nightmares had stopped. The fear had faded. She absently twisted the silver bracelet on her wrist, a gift from Tia, engraved with protective symbols. A reminder that not all gifts came with strings attached. You're zoning out, Tia observed, stirring her latte. Thinking about him again? Bay shook her head. No, just thinking how different everything is now. Tia's expression softened. She reached across the table, squeezing Bay's hand. You survived. More than that, you thrived. And she had. Bay had moved apartments, started a new job, even gone on a few cautious dates. The scars were still there, but they no longer defined her. As the afternoon sun warmed her skin, Bay realized something with quiet certainty. Some gifts were poison in pretty bottles. Some loves were curses in disguise. But real friendship? Real healing? Those were the kind of magic that lasted. The cafe door chimed as a group of tourists entered, their laughter bright and unburdened. Bay took another sip of her tea, savoring the warmth, the sweetness, the simple pleasure of a peaceful moment. She was free, and that was the greatest gift of all.